The first thing I saw was blood the size of rivers. It cut through the forest floor in dark crimson streams, soaking moss and snapping trees beneath its weight. The air trembled with a sound I will never forget. A low, strained breath that rolled through the mountains like distant thunder. I should have turned back. Instead, I stepped closer. The forest of Black Hollow had always felt wrong at dusk. The trees leaned inward as if guarding a secret. I had come there chasing rumors whispered by hunters, stories about shadows taller than watchtowers, and footprints that filled with rainwater like ponds. I thought I would find bones, a carcass, something ancient and lifeless. What I found was her. She lay between shattered pines, her body stretched across the valley like a fallen monument, 10 meters of living, breathing divinity. Her skin shimmered faintly under the dying sunlight. Not quite human, not quite something else. Welcome to our channel, Beyond the Observable. Here, we explore stories that begin where the obvious ends. Please subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell us where you're listening from. That support helps us bring you stories that are deeper and more unsettling every time. Let's begin. Her long silver hair spread around her like a broken halo, tangled with leaves and splintered branches. And she was bleeding. A spear, absurdly small compared to her size, yet devastating in placement, was lodged deep in her thigh. It looked ceremonial, carved with runes that pulsed faintly red. Human craftsmanship. My craftsmanship. My breath caught in my throat. Her chest rose slowly, each inhale bending the air around me. She wore armor made of interwoven leather and metallic scales that clung elegantly to her powerful frame. It was battle-worn, but beautiful. Beneath it, a deep blue tunic draped across her form, torn at the hem, revealing skin dusted with shimmering markings like constellations. She stirred. The ground shook. Her enormous fingers twitched first, curling slightly, crushing a boulder without effort. Then her eyelids fluttered open. Her eyes were not human. They were molten gold. They focused slowly, scanning the treetops before descending, until they found me, a human standing at the edge of her shadow. I could have run. Every instinct screamed at me to disappear, to shrink back into the ordinary world where giants were myths and consequences were smaller. But I did not move. She blinked, confusion softening into pain. Her voice came next, deep yet melodic, vibrating through my ribs. "Are you another hunter?" she asked, her voice strained but not cruel. The words hit me like a blade. I swallowed. "No," I said, though my hands were shaking. "I didn't know anyone was hunting you." Her massive gaze searched my face. Even injured, she radiated a presence that made me feel fragile and exposed. Not just physically small, but morally small. "You carry iron," she whispered. I looked down at the dagger at my belt, human-forged, the same iron that had pierced her skin. Slowly, I removed it and tossed it far into the trees. "I'm not here to hurt you," I said quietly. For a moment, the forest held its breath. Then she tried to sit up. The motion was catastrophic. Trees snapped, stones split. Her hand pressed against the ground to lift herself, and I saw the spear shift inside her wound. Blood welled again, thicker this time. She gasped. Without thinking, I ran forward. It was absurd. I was smaller than her finger, but I ran toward her, toward the source of the trembling earth and the scent of iron in the air. "Don't move," I called out, my voice barely reaching her. She froze, her enormous eyes lowered to follow my path. I reached her thigh, stopping at the edge of the wound. The spear's shaft was thicker than my arm. Runes burned along its surface. "It's cursed," she murmured weakly. "It binds my strength." I placed my hand against her skin. It was warm, too warm, fevered. Up close, her beauty was overwhelming, not delicate, but powerful. High cheekbones, full lips stained faintly with dried blood, a faint scar traced along her collarbone, old and healed. She was not a creature of destruction, she was a warrior. "Why are they hunting you?" I asked, Her gaze darkened. Because we refused to kneel. We? There were more? The thought sent a ripple of awe and fear through me. I can remove it, I said, though I had no idea how. Her golden eyes narrowed slightly. If you do, the binding will break. I will regain my strength. She hesitated, studying me. And you will no longer be safe. The weight of her words settled over me. The human world had rules, boundaries, predictability. Even its dangers were familiar. This was something else entirely. Why tell me that? I asked. Because, she said softly, if you free me, you will not be allowed to return to them. My kind does not forget debts, and humans do not forgive betrayal. The forest seemed darker suddenly. You would have to choose, she continued, us or your world. Her breathing grew more labored. I will not beg, she added quietly. I looked at the spear, at the blood, at the runes carved by hands that looked like mine. Then I looked up at her, 10 meters of wounded strength. And in her eyes, I did not see a monster. I saw loneliness. I don't belong there anyway, I whispered, though I was not sure I was convincing her or myself. Her enormous fingers moved slowly, carefully, until one rested beside me. The tip of it was larger than my entire body. If you pull it, she said gently, you must be ready to lose everything you know. My heart pounded. I wrapped both hands around the spear, and I made my choice. The spear did not come out easily. The moment I pulled, the runes along its shaft ignited in violent crimson light. A shockwave burst outward, throwing me backward across her skin. I slid down the curve of her thigh, scraping against torn fabric and warm, trembling muscle. She screamed. The sound split the sky, not a cry of weakness, but a fury restrained. Birds erupted from the treetops in panicked swarms. The forest bent away from her voice. Do not stop, she gasped, her enormous fingers clawing into the earth, carving trenches through stone. I forced myself upright, gripping the spear again. The heat burned my palms, but I pulled with everything I had. My boots dug into her skin as leverage. The runes pulsed faster, like a heartbeat fighting extinction. Look at me, she whispered suddenly. I glanced up, her molten gold eyes locked onto mine. Do not fear me. The spear slid free. A burst of light exploded outward, blinding and violent. The force hurled me through the air. I remember weightlessness. I remember thinking that this was how I would die, crushed beneath the very being I tried to save. Instead, something caught me. Warmth, firm, careful pressure. Her hand. She had moved faster than sight itself. When my vision cleared, I found myself lying in her enormous palm, her fingers curved craftily surrounding me, as radiant energy surged across her body. The wound on her thigh sealed before my eyes, flesh knitting together as if time itself obeyed her will. The air changed. The oppressive heaviness that had surrounded her vanished. The forest no longer felt like a graveyard. It felt alive, charged. She inhaled deeply, and the sound no longer trembled with weakness. It carried power. Slowly, she rose. The ground quaked as 10 meters of her stored strength unfolded. Trees leaned away from her ascent. Her silver hair cascaded down her back, catching the last threads of sunlight. The torn blue tunic clung to her form, but now it looked less like a victim's garment and more like a warrior's mantle. I stood in her palm, barely able to keep my balance. She lifted me closer to her face. Up close, I saw something I had not noticed before. Tears. Not of pain, of relief. You chose, she said softly. Her breath washed over me like a warm wind. It smelled faintly of rain and metal and something ancient I could not name. I did, I answered, my voice steadier than I felt. She studied me as though committing every detail of my face to memory. My name is Alindra, she said. The name seemed to vibrate in the air, as if the world itself recognized it. I am Colleen, I replied. She nodded slowly. Colleen, she repeated, testing the sound. A faint smile touched her lips. It transformed her expression completely. The fierce warrior became something radiant and almost gentle. But then her gaze shifted beyond me, to the north. Her jaw tightened. They are coming. I turned instinctively, though from her height she could see far beyond what my eyes could grasp. More hunters? I asked. Worse, she said. Her fingers closed protectively around me as she began to move. Each step covered what would have taken me minutes to walk. The forest parted before her, not from force, but from something deeper. The trees seemed to lean aside willingly. As we reached the edge of a cliff overlooking the valley, I saw them. At first, they looked like ants. Then I recognized the glint of armor. A battalion. Dozens of men moving in formation, carrying spears identical to the one. Sensation in my chest. They'll say you attacked first, I said quietly, her golden eyes lowered to me again. And what will you say? She asked. The question struck deeper than any blade. The men below were not strangers. They wore the same colors I once wore. Some of them might have trained beside me, drunk beside me, laughed beside me. But they had hunted her, hunted them. Without warning, a horn sounded from below, a sharp, commanding note that echoed through the valley. They had seen her. Elundra's body shifted subtly, placing herself between the soldiers and the deeper forest behind us. Behind us, where her kind must be. You should leave. Her hand, she said quietly. Stand with your people. They may still accept you. Her voice did not accuse. It offered mercy. I looked down at the valley, at the advancing line of armored figures. Then I looked back at her, at the strength she had reclaimed, at the vulnerability she had shown me, at the loneliness that had flickered behind her molten gaze. Slowly, I sat down in her palm instead. I already chose, I said. For a heartbeat, she said nothing. Then her thumb brushed gently against my back in a gesture so careful, so impossibly tender, that my breath caught. Then stay close, she whispered. The battalion began to spread out, forming a crescent around the cliff's base. A voice carried upward through a speaking horn. Elundra of the High Vale, the commander called. Surrender, and the human who aids you may yet be spared. The words echoed in the fading light. Elundra's grip tightened just slightly. They offer you a path back, she murmured. I swallowed. I don't want it. Her eyes softened. And then she stepped forward, standing at the cliff's edge like a living storm. Tell your king, she called down, her voice resonating across the valley, that I will not kneel. The ground trembled as she raised her free hand. The sky darkened, and for the first time I understood the true cost of my decision, because this was not just rescue. It was war. The first bolt of lightning did not fall from the sky. It rose from her. Elundra's silver hair lifted in a silent storm as veins of pale blue light traced across her skin like living constellations. The air around us crackled, charged with something ancient and furious. I stood in her palm, feeling the hum of power vibrate through my bones. Below, the battalion hesitated. They had expected a wounded giantess. They had not expected a queen of thunder. The commander's voice rang out again through the speaking horn. Loose! Dozens of spears launched at once. They looked like a swarm of dark birds rising toward us. Elundra moved with impossible grace. She stepped back from the cliff's edge and twisted her body slightly, shielding me with her fingers as the spears struck her side. But they did not pierce. The runes on their shafts flared briefly, then fizzled out against a translucent barrier of light that shimmered around her skin. The binding was gone. You cannot chain what you do not understand, she said softly. Then she struck the ground with her heel. The cliff fractured. A wave of energy burst outward, racing down the rock face and across the valley floor. It did not crush the soldiers. It did not incinerate them. It disarmed them. Metal warped, Spears shattered, shields split in half as if sliced by invisible blades. The men stumbled back in confusion, their formation collapsing into chaos. Elendra could have ended them. I knew she could. Instead, she turned, not toward the battalion, but toward the deeper forest. "We must go," she said. Her voice had changed. It was not fear, but urgency. "They will send more, and others will follow." "Others?" I asked. She did not answer immediately. With astonishing speed, she began moving through the forest, carrying me carefully in her hand. Her strides were long and fluid, yet she avoided crushing wildlife beneath her steps. Branches bent away from her as if recognizing their guardian. Minutes later, the trees began to thin. The forest opened into something I had never seen before, a hidden valley concealed by towering stone arches and mist. And there, standing among crystalline pools and ancient pillars of stone, were more of them. Giantesses, 3 of them, each between 10 and 12 meters tall, each breathtaking in her own way. The first had hair the color of burning copper, braided tightly along one side of her head. She wore fitted armor of dark green scales and held a spear twice my height with effortless precision. The second had skin faintly tinted lavender, her long black hair flowing freely down her back. A flowing white garment draped elegantly around her powerful frame, embroidered with symbols that glowed faintly. The third stood slightly behind them, blonde, calm. Her attire resembled a ceremonial robe of silver and blue, and in her hands she carried a staff crowned with a floating crystal. Their eyes locked onto Elendra, then onto me. The copper-haired warrior stepped forward first. "You broke the binding," she said, her voice sharp but relieved. Elendra nodded. "I did not break it alone." Slowly, she opened her hand. I felt the weight of 4 immense gazes settle on me. The lavender-skinned giantess tilted her head slightly, studying me with open curiosity. "A human," she murmured. The blonde with the staff stepped closer, her expression unreadable. "He carries no iron," she observed quietly. The warrior crossed her arms. "He smells of their cities." I swallowed, resisting the urge to step back. Elendra's thumb moved gently behind me, steadying me. "He chose," she said firmly. "He removed the spear, knowing he could not return." Silence followed. The mist curled softly around their ankles. Finally, the lavender-skinned giantess smiled faintly. "Then he is braver than most of his kind." Mylis exhaled through her nose, but gave a short nod. "What is your name, little one?" the blonde asked. "Kaelin," I answered. The name felt smaller here. "I am Serapher," the blonde said. The copper-haired warrior placed a fist against her chest. "Mylis." Navara inclined her head gracefully. "Navara." Sisters. I could see it now, the shared structure of their features, the same golden undertone in their eyes. Elendra stepped into the center of the clearing. "The humans march again," she said. "They will not stop with me." Mylis tightened her grip on her spear. "Then we end it." "No," Serapher replied calmly. "Ending it would require erasing them." Her gaze fell on me again. "And that is not who we are." Navara stepped closer, kneeling so that her face lowered nearer to my height. Even kneeling, she towered above me like a cathedral. "Why did you help her?" she asked gently. Her voice did not accuse. It sought truth. I hesitated. "Because she was alone, and because we were wrong." Miley studied me carefully. "You understand what you've done?" I nodded. "I won't see my world again." The words felt heavier spoken aloud. Elendra's expression softened. "They will see a different one," she said. Without warning, distant horns echoed faintly through the mountains. Serapher's staff pulsed with light. "They have found the outer veil," she said quietly. Miley straightened. "Then the time of hiding is over." Elendra lowered me gently to the ground beside a smooth stone pillar. For the first time since I met her, I stood on my own feet while surrounded by giants. She knelt before me, bringing her face level with mine. Even then, her presence felt vast. "You may still leave," she said softly. "There is a passage through the eastern ravine. Once the veil falls, it will close forever." Her eyes searched mine. This was the last offer. Behind her, her sisters stood ready, radiant and formidable. Warriors, guardians, not monsters. I looked toward the distant mountains where the horns echoed, then back at Alundra. "I'm not leaving you," I said. Something in her gaze shifted. Not relief, something deeper. Belonging. She extended her hand again. This time I climbed into it without hesitation. The valley trembled as the veil of mist began to dissolve, and beyond it, the human army was gathering in numbers I had never imagined. This was no longer a hunt. It was a siege. The veil shattered like falling glass. Mist dissolved into threads of silver light, unraveling above the valley and exposing us to the sky. The human army stood on the ridges beyond, hundreds now, their armor flashing beneath the fading sun. War banners whipped violently in the wind. I stood in Alundra's palm as she rose to her full height. Behind us, her sisters spread out across the valley floor like living pillars. Miley's spun her massive spear once, the motion controlled and precise. Navarra lifted both hands, and the pools scattered across the valley began to glow from within, as if something ancient and furious stirred. Seraphir planted her staff into the earth, and a dome of faint light shimmered briefly over the younger giantesses.
Serapha's voice rose, calm and resonant. "They aim for the children." My breath caught. Elindra's jaw tightened. "No." She stepped forward, placing herself between the ridges and the younger giantesses. I felt the tension in her muscles, the restrained fury coiling inside her. "Kaylin," she said quietly. "Yes. If I fall, you must take them east." The words hit me like ice. "You're not falling," I said. She gave me a small, almost amused look. "Confidence suits you." Another volley launched. This time, dozens of smaller spears rained down in a dark cloud. Elindra raised her free hand. Lightning erupted from her palm. It was not chaotic. It was precise. Each bolt found its target in the sky, detonating the projectiles before they could descend. The valley illuminated in blinding flashes of blue and white. The humans did not retreat. Instead, the commander rode forward on horseback to the edge of the ridge. Even from this distance, I recognized him. Commander Riven. He had trained me. He removed his helmet, his voice amplified by magic. "Kaylin!" he shouted. The sound carried unnaturally clear across the battlefield. My heart stopped. Elindra felt the shift in me. "You know him," she said softly. "He taught me how to fight." Riven's gaze locked onto me and Elindra's hand. "You are being deceived," he called. "They enslave those they spare. Come back and this can end." Murmurs rippled through the human ranks. Elindra did not react with anger. She lowered her hand slightly, so I stood visible above her curled fingers. "Speak," she said gently. The entire valley seemed to pause. I stepped forward in her palm. "They hunted her," I shouted back. "She was alone, bound." Riven's jaw tightened. "They are weapons, Kaylin. If we do not strike first, they will." I looked back at the giantesses behind us, at Navarra shielding the young, at Serapha reinforcing the dome, at Mies standing ready but not advancing. "They could have destroyed you already," I said. Riven hesitated just for a second. That was enough. Behind him, a new sound emerged. Not human. From the far side of the ridge, something enormous began to rise. Metal groaned, stone cracked, and then I saw it. A colossal construct of iron and gears, shaped vaguely like a giant itself, but grotesque and rigid. Its eyes burned with furnace fire. Chains hung from its arms like restraints waiting to be fastened. A Titan engine. I had heard rumors of its creation. I had not believed them. Riven did not look surprised. "It is our answer," he said coldly. The machine stepped forward, each movement shaking the mountain. Even Elindra's breath faltered. Sarafa whispered behind us. They learned from us. The Titan engine raised its arm, and from its palm extended a massive harpoon glowing with the same binding runes as the spear I had pulled from Elindra. They do not seek peace, Navarra said quietly. Elindra's hand trembled slightly beneath my feet. Not from fear, from the weight of the choice before her. If she unleashed her full strength, the valley would survive, but the mountains beyond might not. The Titan engine launched the harpoon. It tore through the air, larger than a house. Elindra turned her body to shield the younger giantesses. "No!" I shouted. Time slowed. Milius leapt again, but was too far. Nara's water spirals could not reach. Sarafa's barrier flickered under strain. And in that frozen heartbeat, I realized something. The runes. They responded to human blood. I turned toward Elindra's face. "Trust me," I said. Without waiting for permission, I ran toward the edge of her palm and jumped. For a single suspended heartbeat, I was falling between two worlds. Above me, Elindra's golden eyes widened in shock. Below me, the Titan engine's harpoon screamed through the air, its runes blazing red, like a brand meant to sear the sky itself. I did not think. I did not hesitate. I reached out. The moment my hands collided with the harpoon's shaft, pain exploded through me. The runes flared violently, reacting to the blood in my veins. I felt them searching, reading, recognizing. Human, their creator, their key. "I bind this weapon to no master," I shouted, though my voice tore in the wind. "Not to kings, not to fear." The runes pulsed faster, unstable. Behind me, Elindra moved. Her hand surged forward impossibly fast, catching me in midair, just as the harpoon's glow shifted from crimson to blinding white. Then it shattered, not into fragments of iron, into dust. A silent eruption of light rippled outward, and the Titan engine staggered. Its furnace eyes flickered violently. The chains hanging from its arms rusted in seconds, collapsing into brittle strands that snapped and fell down the mountainside. The valley went still. The machine groaned one last time before sinking to its knees, lifeless. Elindra's fingers closed around me, careful and trembling. When the light faded, I lay on my back in her palm, my chest heaving. She lifted me slowly to her face. Her eyes were wet. "Do not ever do that again," she whispered, her voice shaking. I tried to laugh, but it came out as a broken breath. It worked. Below us, the human army had fallen silent. Commander Riven stared at the ruined construct, disbelief etched into every line of his face. The mountains held their breath. Elindra stepped forward to the edge of the valley. This time there was no lightning in her voice, no thunder, only truth. "We do not seek your extinction," she called across the ridges, "but we will not live in chains." Her sisters moved to stand beside her, Milius, fierce and unyielding, Nara, radiant and calm, Sarafa, steady as ancient stone. 4 giantesses, each between 10 and 12 meters tall, illuminated by the fading light of a sun that suddenly felt smaller than they did. Riven removed his gauntlet slowly. His gaze found mine and Elindra's hand. "You have chosen," he said quietly. "I have," I answered. The wind carried the words between us. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Riven turned to his army. "Stand down." A ripple of confusion passed through the ranks, but the command held. One by one, weapons lowered. Engines ceased their grinding. Not surrender, but retreat. The banners dipped. The army began to withdraw from the ridges, disappearing beyond the mountain passes from which they had come. I watched until the last glint of armor vanished. Only then did I feel the weight of it, the finality. Elindra lowered herself to one knee within the valley and gently placed me on the grass before her. Even kneeling, she towered above me, silver hair cascading over her shoulder like liquid moonlight. "You cannot return now," she said softly. There was no triumph in her voice, only certainty. "I know," I replied. The words did not hurt the way I expected them to. The human world had been loud, crowded, predictable. Its walls had felt solid, but standing here beneath the shadows of beings who had chosen restraint over annihilation, I felt something else. Purpose. Navarra stepped closer, her enormous presence warm rather than intimidating. She knelt beside Elindra and offered me a gentle smile. "You saved more than us today," she said. Milius rested the butt of her spear against the earth. "You changed the course of 2 worlds." Seraph's staff glowed faintly as she observed me with quiet wisdom. "Bridges are not made of stone alone." Elindra extended her hand toward me again, not to lift me, just to offer it. I stepped forward and placed both of my hands against the tip of her finger. Her skin was warm, steady, alive. "You are not alone anymore," she said. The valley began to shift around us. The younger giantesses emerged from hiding, their fear replaced with cautious wonder as they approached. Some looked at me curiously, others with gratitude. The veil would not return in the same way. The world had changed, both of them. Elindra leaned closer, her voice lowering so only I could hear. "There will be others who do not accept this peace," she said. "From your world, from ours." I nodded. Then we faced them together. A faint smile curved her lips. Together. The words settled into me like a vow. Above us, the sky deepened into twilight, stars emerging one by one. I had lost the world I knew, but I had gained something vast and extraordinary. Not just giants, not just power, a place to stand. Elindra rose to her full height once more, and this time, when she lifted me, it was not out of protection, it was out of belonging. High above the valley, cradled in the hand of a giantess who refused to kneel, I looked toward a horizon, no longer divided by fear, and I knew this was only the beginning. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. It helps us bring more enchanting stories like this one to brighten your day. And let us know in the comments where in the world you're listening from. See you next time.